Hey everyone, welcome to Move the Finish Line. I'm your host, April Nowlin, and if you're looking for a podcast that's authentic, unfiltered, that may make you laugh and might make you cry, you're in the right place. Get ready for an exciting ride with me and my guests as we share stories of resilience, restoration, and winning at life from everyday women. My goal is to encourage you to break through the barriers that are stopping you from chasing your purpose. All right, let's get ready to move the finish line. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again for another episode of Move the Finish Line. I'm your host, April Nowlin, and I am a breakthrough coach and consultant. I love to help women to cultivate their purpose so they can make an exceptional impact on the greatest amount of people. I am also the author and host of Move the Finish Line. So if you guys are wondering, what is Move the Finish Line? This may be your first time listening to the podcast. So Move the Finish Line really is founded on 1 Corinthians 9:24, where it talks about we are all running a race and we are to run to win the prize. We are to run to win. And so my goal is to help women out there who maybe have finish lines that are out of whack. So I believe in running our race. God has ordained finish lines for us. He has an intended end that is perfect for us. But somewhere along the way, we may have gotten lost. We may have gotten distracted, and we just need to move those finish lines back. So through this podcast, I have invited guests on that will talk about various topics where they've had to move the finish lines in their lives. And so I'm excited for today's guest. She is a really good friend of mine. We go back, I don't even know how long. I don't even remember when I met this woman, but I just remember her being such a great friend and being a powerhouse in my life. And so you guys may have seen her on social media and some of the wonderful things that she's doing, but I wanted to dig in to something today that's a little personal. So today we're going to be talking about finances. And I know some of y'all may be like, oh, finances. But my guest today has an incredible financial journey of a season that really could have ruined her and her husband financially, but they came out on top. And so I'm hoping that today's episode will encourage you in this area so that you don't give up hope and that you are encouraged to move your finish lines. So my guest today is Kendra Tillman. She is a coach. She is a mom. She is a marriage champion. She is a wife, and she is just all around fun. So Kendra, welcome to Move the Finish Line.
Thank you. And thank you for calling me fun.
You are fun.
Yeah. And, hearing your introduction was really cool. It's interesting sometimes to see how other people perceive you, because you see yourself one way and then other people maybe see you in a different light. So it's always interesting to hear when it's positive,
Right.
positive.
Right. So Kendra, when I reached out to you about the podcast, I thought about a story that you're going to share today that many people may not have heard from you, that many people don't know about this side of you, but I think it's very familiar. So we're going to talk about finances. And
all right.
You and your husband had what I'm gonna call a crazy financial season many years ago, but I've seen you guys just walk that out and walk through that to become the amazing people that you are now. So share with me a little bit about that journey that you guys took financially.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2007, 2008, especially if you're in the United States, you might be familiar with the fact that the real estate market crashed. The bubble burst. And when I tell you it burst. And that time for us was financially devastating, just as it was for so many other people. It was devastating on a lot of different levels, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, and then, of course, financially. We were heavily invested in real estate. We got into real estate because that's just a passion that we have, wanting to create generational wealth, so that we would have a legacy of wealth, not just for ourselves, but for our children. and just going too far, too fast. And one of the things that was hard during that time is that there were so many narratives and stories being created about the type of people that were invested, talking about how people were vacationing and buying homes that were out of their range and all those kind of things. And we weren't doing any of those things. We were investing specifically for business purposes, but we made a lot of business decisions where real estate was concerned that were just not good at all for us. And so in that process, we had multiple homes out of state that we had purchased that were going to be rental properties. We had bought land out of state. And so all of those things culminated in a disaster financially in 2007, 2008. And it was just like this unraveling that happened. So the homes that we had bought as real estate investments, we ended up foreclosing on those. Wow. The land that we had, we actually still, by the grace and mercy of God, we actually still own the land that we purchased during that time. But it was a financial burden for a really long time. And, it was just so much debt that we acquired during that time. And so what was devastating in terms of the financial sense, I haven't really talked about the emotional part of it, but what was devastating from the emotional, the financial sense was the fact that we accumulated so much debt. And so we had these homes that we were trying to sell that we couldn't. So we were paying the mortgage on those. And again, like I said, they eventually went into foreclosure. We had to pay the mortgage on the land that we had purchased, which was probably like double what we would pay on our own home mortgage. And so we just constantly had money going out and, not as much coming in as what was going out. I was a full-time stay-at-home mom during that season. So I was not working, but I ended up going back to work. So basically what Daniel and we just made the decision that, when we win, we win together. And when we fall together.
I love it.
And so we made the decision that I would go back to work full time so that we could increase our income. We would do whatever we needed to do, try to get rid of the homes that had gotten foreclosed on. So we were able to get rid of that debt. We had a business partner, so we actually split the mortgage on the land, and we've been paying that off, for the last few years. And then I tell you, God in his faithfulness, has done some miraculous things. And so I won't get too far ahead of myself, but I hopefully that paints enough of the picture that people will understand where we were in that season.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's funny because I remember that 17, 18, or 2007, 2008 season. And during that season, I had actually had a house that I sold in 2007, right before everything crashed. So I had a townhome that I'd had for a few years, and just before, like literally months before stuff started to crash, I ended up selling it. And I remember being one of those people that, quite frankly, I judged y'all investors. I was like, y'all just out here want to vacation and just want to buy up all this property. And I'm gonna be honest, I probably had one of those "that's what y'all get" attitudes.
You are not, trust me, you are not the only one.
But little did I know, and my friend was going through. So in the middle,
it makes a difference when you're in proximity to a person that has actually experienced what you're judging other people for, right? Because we don't know each other's stories. That's part of the challenge, is that we have an idea based off of other people's experiences of why people are in the situation that they're in. But until you really know a person that's been there, then it makes a big difference.
Yes. Yes. And it definitely changes your perspective on the situation. Right?
Yes.
So I now have a lot more compassion for people who went through that in that season, and even just making other decisions where you think, this is the right thing to do, and it just doesn't turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. So
Yes.
you and Daniel are in the thick of this, right? I do want to talk about briefly the emotional side of it, because if I'm not mistaken, you also had maybe friends or family that were in this with you. And so share with us a little bit about that emotional journey, because I think we can all maybe relate to, like, I got some debt, right? But what we don't talk about is you don't just have this debt, but there is a whole nother side that affects your life emotionally. So share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So emotionally, it was really hard because we felt like we had let people down. People had invested trusting in us. And even though, you go through the whole, having the conversations with people in advance, like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all making this decision. We're not doing anything illegal or out of integrity or anything like that. But there's always a possibility that something can go wrong. Are you guys still in? And it was like, yeah, we're with you and everything. But when people's money is involved,
that's a whole nother story.
Yes, they might be with you at the beginning, but when the stuff start hitting the fan, then there's a problem. And so it was very difficult. We did lose some friendships as a result of this process, and I'm sure people lost trust in us. And again, there were things that were beyond our control. And I think, to me, I felt so hurt because I felt like we were more financially invested than any of the people that invested with us, and so we took the biggest brunt, as we should have, of the financial crisis that happened. But it felt like as soon as people were afraid, it's like they just were like, I'm out. I'm leaving you high and dry. You figure it out, And so it was hard. And just like I said, that feeling of letting people down, people that were invested. And as a result, at least one of those couples, they ended up having to foreclose on things that they had purchased, which that was extremely painful. Cause it was like, if it were just he and I, and our advice or our results cause us pain, that's one thing. But when your actions cause pain to other people, that's when it's really, really hard. And so, the emotional side of this also impacts your spiritual as well, right? Because then the question becomes, was God, I prayed about this, I just pulled out my little Christian checklist for God, and I was like, we prayed about this, we sought wisdom for it, we did our research, we're tithers, we're givers, and all these different things that you take to God. So then my theology about God was coming into question. So it really made me have to realize, what have I been believing about who God is before all of this happened? And it caused me to really reevaluate what my own theology was. And because if you go through a time in a season in your life, and if you don't have the proper theology about who God is, even that thing can cause you to turn away from your relationship with God. I don't think we talk enough about how we get mad at God sometimes. People aren't the only people we get mad at. We get mad at God too, because we don't understand God, who God really, really is in our life. And so so it was just, again, it was a spiral effect of all these things coming together, and it just created this really big storm in our life.
Man, I totally agree with you about the emotions towards God. So, and a lot of the listeners, at this Move the Finish Line really was founded on my healing journey after my third divorce. And I had received 20 minutes notice that I was getting divorced this time. And I can tell you, those first few months, I was angry at God. I was like, don't talk to me. I'm not talking to you. Like, where were you?
Yes.
Don't talk. And
Yes.
even to the point to where people will be like, I'm praying for you. And I was like, don't pray for me.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
I
That's real.
understand that feeling, and it's real. And like you said, and,
Mm-hmm.
for Christians, sometimes it's like, well, you just love God and God is perfect. No, there are days where it's like, God, look, where were you at?
Yes. And and when you said that too, like, where were you? It
Mhm.
makes me think about where Mary and Martha went in the Bible when Lazarus
Yes.
died. And she said to God, she was like, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. And it's like that feeling is a human feeling
Yes.
and emotion that you feel, because it's like, maybe I didn't say it that way, but that is the exact question. It's like,
Yeah.
if you had been here, then all this stuff would not have happened. But it was like, but is that really true though? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Right.
is that really true?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's funny you brought up that story, because it's actually one of my favorite stories. And the reason why I love it is because a couple verses before that, when Jesus found out Lazarus was sick before he died, right? He said, this sickness won't kill him.
Yeah.
So he already knew,
Mm-hmm.
like, I got this plan. The problem is that Mary and Martha didn't know.
That's right. They didn't know. Come on, girl. You better say that.
And so I think that's a perfect story that fits this situation, because looking at you guys now and looking back, it's like God was like, look, I already got a plan. You don't know, but I know that this ain't gonna break y'all.
Yes.
And so that's the joy in knowing, like you said, knowing who God is like, wait a minute. Okay, you haven't left me. I may feel like you left me, but you haven't left me. And I know you have a plan. So, and thinking about that plan, now, 10, 11 years, 12 years out, you guys are in a very different financial situation, but it didn't happen overnight. You didn't snap your fingers and magically, things were perfect. So along this journey, one of the things that I am just a believer in is asking for help. Right? We are not meant to do life alone. I believe that God has put personal and professional people in our lives to help us through these processes. And so for you and Daniel, who did you guys reach out to, whether it was on a personal or spiritual side or professional help, when you guys said, look, this situation, this has got to change? Who did you guys connect with in order to put that plan in place to change?
So I would say the first people that we reached out to were our family members, like our parents, not to help pay off the debt or anything, but just for that emotional support. I know that during that season, Daniel talked to his mom a lot. I mean, my husband is not the son who calls home all the time or anything like that. He's very close to his parents, but that's just literally not his personality so much. But during this time, I think because his mom is such a prayer warrior and she's such a strong and stable voice in his life, he really talked to her a lot, because he just felt so devastated by everything. And so spiritually, she gave him a lot of guidance during that time. I'm pretty sure he talked to his dad about it as well. I talked to, my parents. I don't think I shared as much as I probably could have with my parents during that time. We talked to our friends, our closest friends about it, which was very hard to share. Like, I just felt so exposed. I felt humiliated. I felt embarrassed. I'm gonna be honest, during this season is when I stopped saying words like, one of the things that used to actually bring a lot of guilt and shame to me is when people say, we missed it, like we missed God and stuff like that. I don't use that phrase anymore, because I don't believe in it. I believe that it's not about whether or not we quote missed God. It's just that you step out and you do what you know to do in a certain season of your life, and it does not always go the way that you want it. And when you start talking about it as you missed God or you missed it, then that brings so much shame, which makes the healing process that much harder. It makes it so much harder when you think about your what you've experienced, as you somehow it's almost like it becomes about you and how you're less than, when I really think it should be
Right.
about what is God wanting to do inside of you. And so we talked to friends about it, which, like I said, was very difficult. And then we talked to my friend who happens to be a financial coach.
Mm-hmm.
We actually started going to her during that season, because going through this season of life, all the anxiety that I had around money,
Uh-huh.
it came into the forefront, right? So everything bubbled up to the top. So this was like one of my greatest fears, right? I
Mm-hmm.
am a full-time stay-at-home mother. We are in so much debt. Like, I really feel like I'm not really being able to fully paint the picture of it, but
Mm-hmm.
I was scared. I was genuinely scared that we might lose everything, that we might lose our house that we were living in at the
Yeah.
time. Anything financially. If my husband would have also lost his job during that time, I don't know
Mm.
what we would have done. So it was very scary. So I reached out to my best friend, who happens to be a financial coach.
Mm-hmm.
She walked with us through, the debt payoff and all those kinds of things, because it was so hard for us to communicate about money, because I had a lot of resentment towards my
Yeah.
husband. I had a lot of fear about the whole situation. So us trying to communicate about money was a disaster. So,
Right.
whenever it would come up, there was so much anxiety, so much fear about the future. Just fear is the
Mm.
best way I can think of it. That's just the overwhelming emotion that I felt during that season. So we really needed her help. But God is so good. We didn't go to the church to talk to them about it, because actually some of the people that were impacted were at the
Mm.
church. It was hard, because
Yeah.
those people went to our church leadership
Yeah.
and told them what happened. So we were not, that was not a good thing, right? It was
Right.
hard. That, I mean, I I feel I'm very removed from it right now,
Right.
but that season was devastating, is the best
Mm.
word that I can think of to describe it. It was difficult on every level that you can think of.
Man, so first of all, Kendra, thank you for your transparency. One of the things that I want to convey on this podcast is the raw emotions that go along with some of these journeys, right?
Yeah.
Because like I said, sometimes we see the rainbow, but we
Mm-hmm.
weren't there for the storm. And
Yes.
I mean, that's real talk to be a stay-at-home mom. Like you said, I can't imagine the fear, of waking up every day, like, are we gonna be homeless tomorrow
Yeah.
because of the decisions that we made? And I love that you walked us through your what you shared with your friends, family, and parents, and then
Mm-hmm.
professionally, because one of the things that I like to share with people is that when you ask for help, make sure you are assigning the right help to the right people, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you didn't go to your parents for financial, like, hey,
Right.
we need
Yeah.
to get out of this. Like, you went to your parents for the help that they could give you, which was that
Mm-hmm.
emotional support. But
Yes.
then you found the professional financial help that you needed to do the work that you needed in that area. And so I think that's so important, because sometimes when we think about asking for help, we ask for help from the wrong people.
Yep.
And then we can't figure out why we not getting it right. And it's like, this person can't help you in that area.
And you know what? Let me add a little something
Mm-hmm.
to that. And with my parents, I didn't really share a lot with them. They knew they knew that something was going on. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't share too much with them, because I didn't want them to see my husband in a negative way,
Yes.
because he hadn't done anything that was, out of integrity, or he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like scheming and plotting, and he
Right.
was doing what he thought. And I didn't want to, because I knew what a good man he was, even though I was mad at him too.
Right. Right.
But I knew that we weren't going to be in this position forever. So I never wanted to
Mm-hmm.
paint him as a villain in the story. So that's why I didn't
Yeah.
share as much with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think I've learned about marriage and
Mm-hmm.
spouses, is that your
Mm-hmm.
family is always going to take your side. I don't
Yes,
care.
always.
I don't care what the picture looks like. And here's the thing, your family may be slower to forgive than you. And so
Yes.
what'll
Yes.
happen is you go and run and tell your family this story. Now they've got a picture of your spouse. You didn't forgave them. And 5 years later, they're still looking at him with the side eye.
Yes. So true. So true.
So I think it's some wisdom in that. Once again, understanding where the right help comes from and what help you need in what area.
Yes.
So, we see you guys now, your family is flourishing, your businesses are flourishing, you guys are doing well, but once again, this didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And so, we can pray, we can cry, we can praise, we can worship, we can do all these things, which are great, and we need to do them. But at the end of the day, there is some work that we have to do, because God did not get us in that situation. We got to do the work to get out with his help, right? So there are very strategic things and intentional things that you guys did so that you could be where you are today. So what does doing the work look like for you? What did it look like for you guys? And what are you doing maybe today to make sure that you don't end up in that same situation?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say doing the work looked like for us was me going back to work full time. The one of the blessings for us was the fact that we have pretty much our entire marriage. I've been married for, it'll be 24 years in May. Yes, thank you. So we have been a one income family. We have built our life off of being a one income family. So anything that comes in, we're making decisions about, okay, if only one of us was working, could we sustain this? Yes. Okay, then we can do it. And so we live that way. And so when I went back to work to help pay off the debt that I was helping to pay off was associated with any debt that we had accumulated during the process of doing the real estate investing. And so that was one of the ways. Then working with my friend, I think we worked with her for like 2 years on our budget, like just being able to talk to each other about money, being able to be very focused on getting debts paid off. Like just having a plan for how we were going to pay it. So if my husband got a bonus, whatever extra, like we used all of my income that I was getting to pay off debt. Like I'm telling y'all, this took years. Like this has, we're talking about it now, but this was like a 10-year journey of paying off different debts and everything like that. I'm trying to think, what else did we do? We paid off debt. We got the help that we needed. Like I would say my own personal development, me being able to get to a place where in my relationship with God, where I could see some of the things that God was wanting to teach us in this process, just that whole personal and spiritual growth process that I needed to go through in order for me to be able to move forward and not stay stuck and fearful in everything that we had experienced. Our own marriage relationship, because it definitely took a hit in the process of us being able to just connect with each other. Like I'm telling you, I felt resentful of him for a really, really long time. And even though we didn't go to a counselor, we went to marriage conferences and retreats and stuff like that, where we would get away together. We would read books. We had, we would get together with our friends. We would have date nights. So we worked on our relationship a lot in order to be able to really heal from that season of our life. So those are just some of the things that are coming to mind in terms of what we did to do the work of moving, being able to move forward.
That is so good. I love that you shared, you didn't just have to do the work to recover financially. You did the work to recover emotionally, spiritually, to recover, in your marriage. Because I think that sometimes when we are facing a difficulty in one area, we try to compartmentalize that area. And it's like, okay, well, if we just get out of debt, everything will be fine. But here's the thing, there are other areas that are broken now that we have to focus on. And I love the fact that you guys focus holistically on the situation. And then I think about the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you said, it took maybe 10 years to get to where you guys are, to get, kind of through that process. And I think about the same when you think about weight loss, right? When people are
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna lose 30 pounds in 2 weeks. Well, you didn't gain 30 pounds in 2 weeks.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's all a process, and being realistic through the process. So as you guys were going through this process and you were having those moments, maybe of doubt, like, oh, we're 3 years in and I'm not seeing it, or, maybe a setback. What are some of the things that you and Daniel did to keep you guys motivated on moving forward?
I will say Daniel is really good about keeping your eyes on the prize and taking things one step at a time. So like we just focus on milestones, right? So, when we would pay off a credit card or we would pay off a certain debt that was associated with it, we still took vacations during this time. It wasn't nothing fancy,
Right.
but we still enjoyed our life. So it wasn't like 10 years of toil, and we still were enjoying our life together. And so it was just trying to find those different milestones that we could focus on, and I don't know how much we're going to get into this, but I just wanted to share that God is so faithful because he showed us little glimpses along the way that he was with us through this the entire time. And I want to speak specifically to women who either have been married or are married right now. God is just, wow. So like I told y'all, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. And I remember one day just having this low feeling like we're never going to be able to own another home. Like this has set us back so far financially that I don't see how we're ever going to get out of this. And our credit is ruined. We got 2 foreclosures, not just one, but 2 foreclosures on my husband's credit report. But God and his faithfulness, my husband never put my name on anything. So because he did not put my name on anything, nothing happened to my credit. So 6 years ago, I had been working for a while. I was able to purchase us a house with just my credit.
Girl, look at Jesus.
Yes, which was a miracle because I, like, oh man, it's like I just see God's hand and how sovereign and faithful he is. Like he always is looking out for us. And I love my husband. He is he's an honorable man. He is a good human being, and I would like him even if he wasn't my husband. And God has showed me that God has been taking care of me all along. Like I was putting too much of my dependence on him, my husband, that really belonged to God. And I felt like me being able to buy that house was God's way of saying, I always had you. I was always taking care of you. And it took, so that was 6 years ago when we bought the house that we have now. And so that would have been 2015. So that was 8 years from the time when or 7 or 8 years from the time when all the foreclosures and stuff started happening. So I was able to do that. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, I will never doubt again that God can take care of me. I just won't do it, because that was something, April, I just never could have anticipated that he would be able to do that. My husband has always been the one who makes the most money in our relationship. And so just for God to do that, it was just like me and God's thing. That was just our little thing that, So anyway, I could just go on and on, but that, I don't know, that just stands out in my mind so much because it just felt like an impossibility for me. And then God did it. So.
Yes. And here's the thing, you, like you said, your husband had been the primary breadwinner. So for you, right?
Yeah.
How the stay-at-home mom, for
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
to have been able to turn around and provide a home for your family. God was like, I got you. I got you.
Yes.
I
And he did it because my husband, his income is, he does extremely well, but because of those 2 foreclosures, right?
Yep.
That's why he couldn't buy our next home. But I could. I was like, come on, Jesus.
Girl, unexpected. I called, those unexpected blessings. I was talking to someone last night and we were talking about that. And so through my divorce, I remember financially it was difficult. I was the primary breadwinner, but his income had, contributed. And so a few months after we were divorced, I had gotten a flat tire. And all that don't know me, the cars that I like happen to be like the sport edition. So anytime something goes wrong, it's like, wait, that's how much? And so I remember I had run over something in the road. I had slashed my tire and I had bent the rim. And on this particular vehicle, the rims were custom. So it wasn't like you could just go buy one. Like you have to be ordered in a certain size. They were custom colored. So they had to be dipped in this certain color and then the tire. And so I had called around and I had actually ended up at a dealership, which, dealerships are typically more expensive, but they were the only one that carried the parts, right? And so I called around. The guy was like, it's going to be like $900 to replace this just one tire and one rim. And I had, kid you not, Kendra, I had about $400 in the bank. And so they looked at it and he said, okay, the rim doesn't need to be replaced, but the tire is going to be $300 and something. But I needed my car. So I said, okay, God, I'm just going to, bite the bullet and trust you. So I go to the car dealership, they replace everything. And the guy walks out to me, puts the keys in my hands, and he says, your car's out front. It's done. And I said, but I haven't paid for the tire. And he goes, what tire?
Wow.
Girl, let me tell you, I stood in the parking lot crying and hugging this man.
Yes.
Pre-COVID. So I was snotting and crying all on his shoulder. And he was just looking at me like, are you okay? But it's one of those moments when God just says, I got you.
Yeah.
Like, I got you. And so that doesn't compare to buying a house in the monetary value, but it reminds us of just how much God
loves. It's just one of those, these are material things, and at the end of the day, they don't really matter. But those moments with God matter. They 100% matter. It's like he's like, I see you and I've been taking care of you. It was like that moment when we bought that house felt like God was like, I already, the scripture that says he knows the end from the beginning. Like he already took care of this when 2007, 2008 happened.
He took care of it then.
Yes.
But because you did the work, had you not gone back to work, had you not maintained, put a plan in place to debt, I think had you not done those things, then you would not have given God the opportunity to show up.
Yes, that's so good, April.
I think we forget about that sometimes. We treat God like a magic genie, like he just poof appears. But I believe that there's work that we have to do, not working for his love, not working for his blessings.
Yes.
But I believe that there's work that we need to do in order for God to come in and move. And so think about it. Had you not done what you needed to do, had your husband not protected your credit, had you not gone back to work, then God could have blessed you with a house. But I believe that what you did opened that door for God to say, okay, she ready. Boom. Here you go.
Amen. She ready.
So Kendra, like I said, I've heard this story, but I mean, you have just blessed me today all over again, just sharing some of the ins and outs of what you and Daniel went through. And I pray that, hearing this story is going to bless other women. And so before we close, you were just so wise. I love it. And I told y'all she was fun. Okay. She was fun. But if there are other women who might be in a similar situation, and it may not even be financial, right? But they are struggling right now in a situation that may seem impossible to get out of, what would you share with them during this time?
I would share with them. I always tell people I see Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid. I call him the great theologian.
Yes.
And, you know, like if you've ever watched the movie Karate Kid, Daniel wants to learn karate. So he goes to Mr. Miyagi and Mr. Miyagi has him painting his fence and washing the floors and all this stuff. And he's like, what in the world does me washing floors and painting your fence have to do with me learning karate? And, you know, what he learns is that what Mr. Miyagi tells him is that what you see is not all there is, you know, and that is like, I just feel like God is always doing more than what you can see. And, you know, we can talk a good game in our faith about how we trust God and how we believe God. But then there is life, when life requires you to live what you say that you believe. And so, you know, if you're in a moment and a season of your life right now, know one thing, that first of all is temporary. All seasons of life are temporary. They're subject to change at any moment. That God is always doing more than what you think he is doing. In those moments, even when you feel at your absolute lowest, God is always doing more than you think. And that to reach out to the people like that God has placed in your life who want to support you and want to encourage you, who want to be there for you. You know, this journey would have been a whole lot lonelier if we had tried to just keep ourselves protected and not share with other people, friends, family members, people that we trust, what was going on. You know, so I feel, honestly, April, I feel like everything the questions you've asked me that have walked us through today, the journey that we were on, those are all the things that I would encourage a woman to do. You know, and one of them was the question you asked about who did we ask for help? You know, because we need each other. And so we need the help of other people, and not thinking that you have to, because of your own shame, your own guilt, your own embarrassment, that you have to keep this to yourself. But know that there are people who love you, who will not judge you, who will be there if you just reach out and ask for the help that you need. And of course, God is the greatest friend that you will ever have in your life. And I just want to end with this one little quick story. I remember during this season walking up to the church, and I will never forget this for as long as I live. And I wasn't physically hunched over, I don't believe, with my head down, but I feel like spiritually I was. Like, I just cannot tell you how much shame I felt.
Yeah.
And I remember the scripture that came to mind. It was like, I'm the lifter of your head. And I feel like the Holy Spirit was like, lift your head up. You don't have anything to be ashamed about. And I'm telling you, every time I tell that story, I feel emotional because I needed God to say that to me. Like, you don't have anything to be ashamed about. And that scripture just came alive to me. So I just want to encourage any woman, you don't have anything to be ashamed about. You know, God is with you. He is not judging you. And there's a lot of people that love you and care about you. And now, you know what? We got work to do. We got things that God has called us to. So you get the healing, the support that you need, the affirmation that you need, the friendships that you need. And then you get to work doing what God has called you to do. And don't let anything that's in your life define who you think you are and how you think God can use you. Because he can use you. He can still use your life to be a blessing to other people.
Kendra, that was so good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That ministered to me. I'm like, shoot.
Yes.
Check my life real quick. Hold on.
Yes, I needed somebody to say that to me. Yes.
Well, Kendra, thank you so much, for giving of your time today, for sharing your story, for sharing words of, wisdom, authenticity, truth, and encouragement. We needed it all. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how can they contact you or connect with you?
So you can connect with me through StrongHer, HER.me, StrongHer.me. That is my website. It has all the different ways. Or if you are an Instagram user, I'm Kendra Tillman on Instagram. And also my business account on Instagram is StrongHerMe, all one word. So
awesome. And I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes so you guys can go and connect with her if you want to connect with Kendra. Kendra, thank you again. Like I said, I value you. I value your time. I value your wisdom. And I just appreciate you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you, friend.
Love you, girl.
All right. Love you too.
That's another episode, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys want to connect with me, you can connect with me at aprilnowlin.com. I'd love to, share more stories with you guys. Go out there, check out more episodes. There's so many topics that we're covering. And I just know that these guests and their stories and their journeys will encourage you to move your finish lines. All right, y'all. Now, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I pray that it encourages you and you were able to laugh a little bit along the way. Now, if you know someone who has a story of resilience, restoration, and winning at life, let me know. I would love to share their story with my audience. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you guys don't miss a beat. If you want to connect with me, hop over to aprilnowlin.com where you can learn all about how I help women to cultivate their purpose so they can impact more people. You can connect with me on Facebook and Instagram and Clubhouse under April Nowlin. Thanks again for listening.